Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Bream Fishing Project. And in this episode, we're heading down to Tasmania. So we're actually doing the second part of the Hobie tour, which was round 4, Swan River, March 9 and 10 in Tasmania. The reason we're doing the second one is because this is the one that got recorded first, so no other reason. Anyway, this is a cracking round, was a cracking event, and I'm really excited to bring it to you guys. I'll roll the intros and we'll get into all the stuff. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bream Fishing Project. This is where you need to be every Tuesday to find out all the latest tips and tricks to help you target bream on lures. You'll get to hear from some of Australia's elite bream competition anglers and see how they were able to achieve their results in competitions around the country. Now, here's your host, the 2019 Hobie Kayak Fishing World Champion, Andrew Deeth.
All right. So in any event where your winner can weigh in over 1 kilo per fish for their 6 fish, particularly in the kayaks, is a good event. And this is what happened in Tasmania. So I'm going to run through all that stuff in a minute. Let's get straight into it, I think. I'll run through the bite periods and then we'll get into all the placings and that sort of stuff. Here we go. On the Saturday, we had a really high fish activity wheel, so 81. We had a major bite period at 10:58 a.m. through to 1:28 p.m. with a high tide of 6:43 at 1.17, running down to a low at 2:14 p.m. at 0.19 of a meter. On the Sunday, we had a minor bite period at 5:33 through to 7:03, so just on start time. Major bite period at 11:47 through to 2:17, so 2:17 p.m. with a high tide at 9:06 a.m. at 1.31 and a low tide at 3:41 at 0.12. All right, in terms of fish caught there on day 1, there was 117 fish caught at a total weight of 92.59 kilos. Day 2, total fish 134, so slightly better on day 2. The conditions were a bit nicer. Total weight of 118.62, giving 251 fish total, 211.21 kilos. And the all-important average, which makes all of this, I think this is the interesting part, 840 grams average fish weight. How good is that? The Atomic Big Bream winner, 1.39 kilos, went to Dylan Pace, as you'll find out later in the episode. The monster mover was Denny Jobson. Had a donut on day 1, backed it up with 2.45 kilos to take out that division. In the women's, from Tasmania, we've got Stacey Alexander. 2.12 on day 1, backed it up with a 3 kilo bag, so 3.08 on day 2, 6 fish for 5.2. And of course, David Ayton as the Masters, 3 fish for 2.3 on day 1, bigger bag on day 2 of 2.87, giving him a 5.17 kilo bag. Now, last Hobie round, I did forget the Batman and Robin division. So for those of you who don't know, the Hurricane-sponsored anglers Tony Petty and Simon Morley, they kind of had a bit of a standing joke of whoever would be the winner out of those two within a competition would be Batman, and whoever didn't win would be Robin. Anyway, Tony Petty is the reigning Batman. So coming out of this event, he is definitely there. I think he's won the last 3 in a row. There's rumors, these are not unsubstantiated rumors, that if he goes through a whole season of being Batman, he's going to get a Batman tattoo. Who knew? You heard it here first. And the last thing of note is that Nicole Smith of ABT, day 2, she got 2.27, which means her partner in crime, Steve Morgan, he got 1.89 on day 2. We're not talking about any other results. So at the moment, Nicole's winning. So there you have it. All right. I think that's all the formalities. This is a great little episode. There's 3 really good interviews. I think you're going to really enjoy this. So let's start it off with the one and only Joel Crosbie. Here we go. All right, everybody. So first up, we have an angler that dropped 2.92 kilos on the scales on day 1, backed it up on day 2 with an even better bag of 3.13 kilos, giving him a total of just over 6 kilos at 6.05. I'd like to welcome back to the Bream Fishing Project, Joel Crosbie. Welcome back, mate.
Thanks, Deethy. Thanks for having me again.
Mate, you've done it again. You've got another great result. And it sounds like you guys had a blast down in Tassie.
Yeah, it's for anyone that is thinking about doing Tassie next time, whenever that is, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, I can highly recommend going down there. It's a really cool, an amazing fishery, to be honest, and it's a cool little adventure to have with everyone as well.
Exactly. And with some, like you said, the fishing, 6 kilo bags for the top 4 is pretty awesome.
It was, especially on that. Look, Saturday was particularly tough weather-wise, but Sunday was next level fishing. It was really cool.
Wow. All right. I can't wait to get into it. All right, let's start with the pre-fish, mate. What do you get up to?
So pre-fish, I'll even we'll go back a little bit further than that and go to the research. Myself and Ben Gibbs got some really good information from a couple of the local Tassie guys, and I was speaking to Richard Summerton and Benny Harrison. So we got some really good information about the system because neither of us had been there before. So we were going in blind, and there wasn't a lot of information online. And I know I've spoken to you in previous podcasts about the research that I like to do beforehand. So we got some really good information between the two of us, and which gave us a good plan for pre-fish. We were able to sort of separate and split up and check out a few different areas. So for me, I started off, I thought I'd go into, I think it's called Pelican Lake or Pelican Lagoon, which is a couple of k's from the start line. It's a little shallow lake off the main river.
Yeah.
So I ducked in there first thing. I got a fish almost straight away on a jerkbait. I think it was the Duo Realis 80.
Okay.
Yeah, got one on early, missed another one with a big boil, and then it sort of went a bit quiet. And I went sort of right to the back of the lake, and it's only where I got the first fish was only about 0.8 of a metre, so 2.5 foot, 2 foot. And I went right to the back of the lake where my pedals were touching the bottom, and I started flicking around a Crush City jerk.
Oh, yeah.
And started to get a few fish at the back of the lake there. Nothing huge, sort of 33, 34 forkers.
Yeah.
So found a patch of fish up there, and then sort of decided I'd seen enough in there, came back out to the main river, and just downstream from that, the entrance to the lake there's a big flat, and from the information we'd been told there was meant to be good fish up on that flat. I couldn't find any. It was a clear day. There was no wind, so I couldn't even see any bream up there, but just on the drop-off, so where it dropped off from a foot deep to started to taper off to sort of 4 or 5, 6 foot deep, there was lots of fish just sitting there in those clear, calm conditions.
Right.
And so I saw them, and I went along probably 100 metres, and there was fish the whole way along. So I actually dropped off them and was I had my kayak sitting about 1.7, 1.8 metres of water, and I was just casting a soft plastic back onto the edge and hopping it back, and I got a couple of fish. So I marked those fish and then thought I'd change it up, go to the opposite side. Same thing happened again. I was set in about that 1.7 metres of water, casting up into the flat, bringing it back. And I was using a 3.5 inch Z-Man grub in motor oil. The old.
Right. Okay. So you changed it up from the Crush City.
Yep. I went to the grub, the old faithful 1/8 jig head and 3.5 inch grub, and did that on the other side, on the opposite side of the main river channel as well. And that was basically my pre-fish done. Oh, that's right. I did have one cast. I just went into the edge of the racks. I had one cast with the Crush City and got smoked.
Oh.
But I just, I thought, cool, there's fish in the racks as well. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bother with them at the moment. I actually had a rod tied up the entire week I was down there with an 8-pound leader, but I'll get to that later.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was basically my pre-fish done. I worked my way back up and I marked fish as I went on the sound. So the fish that I caught, I marked them on the GPS.
Yeah.
And that was basically my pre-fish. So I think my plan after that was just to fish those drop-offs off the main river channel, because that seemed to be where the bulk of the fish were. So, yeah, that was pre-fish done.
Cool, mate. There's one question before you get into your comp day. With the Crush Cities, what are you rigging them up on?
That was so that was fishing, because I was only fishing them in shallow water, so they're only less than a metre of water. I think I had them on it was either 1/20th or 1/30 1/0 jig head.
Okay, so jig head, not hidden weight.
Yeah, jig head, but I painted the jig head to match the plastic, so.
Right, okay.
So they look pretty.
They do look pretty.
Yeah, thanks Paul Mello for that tip.
And Paul's great at that stuff. Yeah, I was interested to hear how you got those, because if you've got the jig head at the front, they're going to sink a little bit nose down. If you've got a hidden weight, they're potentially a little bit more level sinking. So
The fish didn't seem to mind it. Like they were still smacking it, and I didn't actually miss too many hookups either. There wasn't too many tail grabs. They wanted it. They were eating head first. So yeah, they didn't seem to be concerned by that jig head at the front.
All right. So rolling around onto the first day of comp, I can never remember which day of the week these ones were. How'd you go? How was your comp day?
It was actually Saturday.
Good on you.
And look, the forecast was miserable.
Oh.
It was, I can't remember exactly, but I think there were gusts to 45 or 50 Ks from the north forecast, and I'm pretty sure they eventuated. It was rough on the water, but the good thing about the Swan is there was plenty of areas to hide. So, and it fitted in with my plan okay. Like I knew I could fish the edges of that channel relatively easily with that wind. So I went straight back to that bank just below the mouth of the little lake there, and just sat in that 1.7, 1.8 meters of water and started casting the soft plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what I forgot to say on pre-fish day was I actually started, after I got a few fish on the 3.5 inch grub, I actually started throwing the Streaks 4-inch Z-Man grub.
Right.
So the big one.
Yeah.
And the fish had no hesitation in eating that either.
Right. Wow.
So I actually started with that on Saturday morning on a 1/8 jig head, and went straight to that bank, started fishing that, sit in the kayak in 1.7, 1.8 meters, and then you're casting up on the edge of the flat. And it was a bit slow to start with. I got one small fish early, but interestingly enough, I marked the fish that I caught the previous day. It wasn't until I got to those GPS marks that I started catching fish.
Wow.
So there must have been something on that bank that was concentrating those fish in that one little area. Like it's probably a 250 metre stretch of bank where I caught pretty much all my fish on the Saturday on day one.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was just throwing that. I ended up just throwing that 4-inch Z-Man Streaks the whole morning. Yeah, and I just slowly upgraded throughout the morning. We were only fishing till 1 p.m. on the Saturday morning because of that wind. And to be honest, I was off the water at 11:30.
Right.
Because the weather was that rough, and I was like, I'm not going to risk breaking anything on the kayak or myself.
Yep.
And I knew I had an okay bag. Like I knew I had a solid start.
Yeah.
So I was pretty comfortable with what I had in the live well. By about 10:30, I think I'd probably stopped fishing and started making my way back.
Yeah. Okay.
Tried fishing a few areas on the way back. The wind was just too much. So I called it quits, conserved some energy. I knew that the weather forecast was much better on the Sunday, so I figured that I'd conserve a bit of energy, so I had a bit more enthusiasm on Sunday.
Yeah.
Because it had been a long week, to be honest.
Yeah, okay.
After doing a little swan port and then backing up with a Swan. So, So I was off the water by 11:30, happy with my bag. I weighed 2.92. I think I was sitting sixth. So,
okay.
And I like sort of sitting between sort of 4 and 7 after day one. I think that's sort of the sweet spot.
Yeah.
As long as we're not too far away from the leader. And I think I was only 300 grams behind Dill after day one anyway. So it wasn't, we weren't that far away.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Definitely achievable back down there. So yeah. Mate, one thing with your grubs, that's what I understand, you're sitting in about 1.7, casting up into the shallows. Was that right? And how are you working it back?
Yep, and that was exactly what I was doing, casting it up. I was actually casting it into the wind because it was the northerly. I was having to cast into the wind, but I had a 1/8 to get on and it seemed to be punching it far enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just hopping it, just 2 or 3 hops, letting it drop to the bottom all the way back. And most of the time they were crunching in the first 2 or 3, lifts.
Yeah.
They were obviously they were sitting just on that edge. There was sort of a bit of scattered weed and stuff on that edge as well. But it was that windy on the Saturday. Every time I caught a fish, I actually pedaled backwards and got onto the flat behind where I'd been fishing and power poled down to deal with the fish, because the first fish I caught I didn't, and I sort of drifted like 300 metres almost across to the other side of the channel there.
Yep.
But every single fish I'd duck onto the flat, power pole down, deal with the fish, and then pop back out again and get back into the right depth, because it was pretty sporty out there.
Yeah, fair enough. How good's the power pole?
Oh, mate, I've probably only had it for the last 12 months, and I don't know how I fished without it, to be honest.
Yeah, it definitely changes things for those who can put it on their kayaks. So. All right, mate. A 6 place overnight. tell us about Sunday. Was it a better day, and how did it play out for you?
So weather-wise, it was certainly a better day. And I thought, well, I'll just go back and do exactly what I did the day before. Because I only did 2 drifts across that edge. So I hoped there was going to be still a fair few fish there. But that didn't eventuate. It was pretty tough for me the first hour and a half on Sunday. I got my bag pretty early, but they were all like 27, 28 forkers, which you don't come to Tassie to catch those fish.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty disappointed. So I changed things up. I went across to the opposite side. I actually ran into Gibbsy. He was the same. He wasn't doing that well either. So I was sort of fishing a flat next to him. And I think I might have got one little upgrade as he left, but same thing. It was only like a 20, might have been a 27 fork to a 29 or 30 forker.
Sure.
Not a huge upgrade. And about 10 minutes after I left him, David Ayton, who I actually travelled down with for the Tassie trip, come pedaling over and he said, "Hey, how you going?" And I was like, "Well, not great. I need to find some bigger fish." And he's like, "Come with me." He did one. He just told me he did one drift on the outside of the racks, throwing a 1/8 jig head with a 3.5-inch Z-Man grub, and he got 3 fish, dropped another 2, and he said it was fishing really well. So I was like, okay. So I went with Dave and I was like, okay, no, let's go. We went to the racks. We actually just fished the middle. There was a bit of an opening in the middle that was wide enough to fit us both down that we could fish a rack each side. The first drift down, I think he got a fish, and then just at the end of it, I got one fish. I was still actually throwing. I actually went back to the Crush City jerk.
Okay.
Because I had a lighter jiggy head on. I thought I'll just try that, even though David already told me to use a heavier jig head. I went with that, and I got a 36 forker straight off right at the end of the first set of racks. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. So Dave's onto something here. And then spun around, and we went. Then I thought, okay, let's get serious. We went into the middle in between the two, one of the little corridors between the racks there, and I pulled out the rod that I had the 8-pound leader tied on for the entire week that never threw.
Oh.
Put a Z-Man grub on. I actually went to a 1/20th hidden weight.
Okay.
I don't know why I did that, but I know why I did that, because that was the jig head that was tied onto that rod.
Okay. That's good reason.
It was as simple as that. Yeah, there was no more science in it other than that. Yeah, and through that, started throwing the 3.5-inch grub, and then it was for the next 3.5 hours. It was some of the best racks fishing I've ever had. Like pulling those, like I said to you before, the smallest fish we pulled that I pulled out of the racks was a 34 forker.
Wow!
In those next 4 hours, I only got smoked once, which I would have loved to have seen that fish, because I think the biggest I pulled out was a 1.1. It just came to the surface shaking its head.
Yeah.
Straight into the net, which was very handy. And I pulled hooks on a couple of fish as well, but pretty much all the rest of the fish, but they were all 35, 36 forkers. And we did multiple drifts, and they just kept coming to the point where Prikey came over and saw us as well. And he goes, "What are you guys doing?" Dave told him, and then he ended up pulling a 3.3 kilo bag.
Yeah, it's accurate.
Fishing the same racks as us.
Yeah.
Which was just ridiculous. Yeah, like it's pretty crazy to be pulling over 3 kilo bags out of the racks like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very forgiving racks. The racks that we were fishing actually had hardly any rails, no ropes. It was just poles.
Okay.
But for some reason, the brim was stacked up in there. So, massive thank you to Dave Ayton for giving us a heads up on that. Could have been a very different day.
Yeah.
But so for about 3.5, 4 hours, we were pulling one after another. I just kept doing drifts. They just kept coming. And eventually it slowed down at probably about midday, probably a bit later, probably 12:30. And so I thought I'll just go check, because I had a couple of marks on the same side of the river that didn't hit the day before because of the wind. So I ducked out to them quickly, and I pulled 4 fish in 10 minutes. I was like, okay, cool. The fish are still there as well, but they weren't the same size or quality as the ones out of the racks.
Wow.
So, I went back in for one more drift in the racks, and I actually dropped one good fish. I got to look at it and pulled the hooks on it. And then right at the end, hooked a big stingray that smoked me in the racks. Yeah. I did, when I first hooked up, I did think that I'd caught like a 4 kilo brim. By the way, it went in the size of the boil, but it turns out it was just a big old stingray.
Yeah.
So that broke me off, and there wasn't enough time to tie another leader. So that was pretty much my day done.
Yeah, mate. It sounds like a cracking day. Mate, with the racks, I just want to go over a couple of things. So first of all, were you guys drifting on current or on wind, or how was that?
We started off I was trying to work into the current, so casting up current and bringing it back down to look as natural as possible.
Yep.
And then a couple hours in, the wind picked up and sort of made that a bit tricky. It was sort of the opposite way around. But in the end, it turned out I don't think the fish didn't care which way you were dragging those lures.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think they're very wise down there to the lures and the racks.
Yeah, okay.
They mustn't get a lot of pressure just by the sheer amount of fish that kept coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was ridiculous how many fish. Like there was 3 of us fishing that one set of racks for a good number of hours, and we were still pulling fish right at the end. So
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and you had a what'd you say, number one hidden weight, maybe 1/20th, and
I think it was 1/20th. Yep.
Was it a hard wire or have to be a hard wire?
Yeah, heavy one. Yep.
Yeah, heavy wire. Sorry.
Yeah,
and
heavy judo. Yeah.
And same deal. Were you just throwing it out and just hopping it back to the kayak, or were you slow rolling it, or how was that?
Yeah, no, just hopping it back like I normally do. Yeah, it was. Yeah, just hopping it back, casting as close to the poles as possible. I actually don't think that mattered. I think a couple of times I was hooking the fish in the middle.
Yeah.
Right at the end of the retrieve. So I don't think they were too concerned. It was just a matter of dragging it past the fish's face.
Wow.
But yeah, crazy fishing.
Oh, there you go. There you go. All right, mate. Well, that's a cracking rundown, mate. So apart from the 8-pound rod, what else were you running for the weekend?
So when I was fishing those deep channels, the deeper channels, sorry, I was using 6-pound leader. They didn't seem to be 2 litre shy there at all. Like normally I'd be fishing 4-pound on those edges, but yeah, I had no issues getting bites on that 6-pound leader on those edges. And I can't even tell you what braid I was running. It'd be some 8 or 10-pound braid. I've got different ones on each rod. So yeah, there's no particular braid I use.
Fair enough. All right. Well, mate, I reckon that's a pretty good rundown of the fishing. Mate, tell us, what did you get to take home for 3rd place in Tassie?
Good question. I think it was $550.
Yep, that's exactly it.
And most importantly, another trophy.
Yep, very good.
That's the most important thing that I fish for now. Is I like getting those little trophies. They're cool. Good little memento. And a good little goodie bag, as always, from all the sponsors.
Yeah.
So that paid for probably the trip over there. So that was handy.
Yeah.
Didn't make it as expensive as... And actually, to be fair, when you sit down and do the maths for going to Tassie, and it's 2 comps back to back, if you averaged it out over the season and you did 2 comps, say traveling northern New South Wales, it's probably actually not much different money-wise in the end.
Sure. Yeah, because you do one lot of travel.
Yeah, that's also something for people to think about as well if they want to come down to the next one. That's probably not much different to doing 2 tournaments anyway. Definitely.
And your opinion would be, although there has been some speculation that maybe it might be a 4-year gap, that 2 years might be a better gap.
Oh, look, I would certainly, if it's 2 years again, I would definitely come down again. I'm like Josh Carpenter now, sign me up straight away.
Very good. Very good. All right. And mate, I don't know the answer to this. Did you get a AC spot?
Nope, just missed out. It was only the top 2 that got AC spots. So yeah, I've still got some work to do there.
Oh yeah, but you're well on your way, mate. You're well on your way.
Yep.
And mate, one more thing before we head off, mate. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Just the usual people. Obviously, Chris, Daryl, Tamika, all the team at Hobie. Brad wasn't there. He was stuck on the mainland. Also to Darren Haywood and Dougie Baker and everyone else that helped at the weigh-ins. They went above and beyond, so appreciate all their help. Massive shout out to the guys that we stayed with at the house for the week. It was a very fun and enjoyable week with lots of red wine consumed.
Wow.
I think we converted a couple to red wine, so that's cool, or at least one.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
So, yeah, really, really fun week with the guys. So, yeah, very keen to do that again with them. And obviously, Scott Lovig, SLH Mornington, for his support for all my kayak needs.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't do it without his support. And lastly, my beautiful partner, Carla Hall, for letting me go to Tassie without her.
Without her?
Yeah.
Or maybe next time.
I suspect, next time I won't be getting away with it. She'll be coming with me.
And mate, when are we going to see her on the kayak fishing?
Yeah, we're still working on that. Leave it with me.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe, we'll get her a kayak.
No, she's already got a kayak. That's not the issue.
Okay. Well, just clearing that up.
Yeah, no. She's got the kayak ready to go. We just need to do a bit more practice.
Fair enough. Sounds good to me. All right, mate. Absolutely fantastic to have you back on the show. And yeah, hopefully we get to talk to you again later on in the year.
Fingers crossed.
Very good, mate. All right, I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Deethy.
All right, fishing.com.au, your one-stop brim lure and tackle shop. Pick up the latest tackle, including Muscle Vibes, Cranker Crabs, OSP Bent Minnows, Z-Man Plastics, Eco Gear Lures, Daiwa, Rods, Reels, and Tackle. Same-day shipping. Shop where the world champion, the Australian champion, and the current ABT champion shops. Fishing.com.au, online or in-store at shop 18/29 Kiora Road, Miranda. Now, as you get into this interview, you're going to hear about a lure called an OSP Durga. And I'd like to tell you that Adam's got these in stock. They've got a great range of colours, and particularly if you're out there hunting blacks, I think these would be a great little addition to your kit. He's also got a bunch of lures that are worth having a look at in the clear out lures. So jump on there. I'm looking at the Imakatsu Crank, which is a deep diving lure, but the colour that he's got on the face page, I used a similar colour on the weekend and brained him. It was similar colour in OSP, but yeah, quite interesting. Anyway, fishing.com.au. All right, so coming in a second place, we've got an angler that dropped just over 3 kilos, so 3.01 on the Saturday. Backed it up on the Sunday with 3.29, giving him an even 6.3 kilos for 6 fish. And second place, I'd like to welcome back to the Bream Fishing Project, Ben Gibbs. Welcome, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here, mate. Finally.
Mate, so good to be having a chat to you. It was only a couple of weeks ago we had a chat about, what's going on with the Bream Masters, and here you are as a place getter. How good's that?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. You did give me a rev up then too, I reckon, and told me you need to see me on the podcast. So, yeah, it's good.
Definitely, mate. And look, the Tassie rounds, I've talked to a couple of guys and it seems like they were so good. I'm really disappointed I couldn't make it. However, you guys had a great time and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you did. I've spoken to Joel. I'm about to speak to Dylan, but now you're up. So there you go.
No, it was fantastic over there. It was funny because when I got home, I was like so exhausted just from the travel and everything. And then like 2 days later, I like messaged all the boys. I'm like, man, we need to go back. Right. Yeah. So special place, definitely.
Fair enough. And this is a shout out right now to Chris Purnell. 4 years is too long. 2 years is a great plan.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Fair enough. Oh, well, I'll do what they do. Anyway, mate, let's get straight into it. Tell us about your pre-fish and your lead up to the comp and sort of how you went about your business.
Yeah, so lead up to the comp, me and Joel Crosbie kind of put our heads together and kind of come up with a bit of a plan. And it's funny because I met Joel at George's River last year. I ended up staying at a house with him and we kind of hit things off. And since then, we've kind of worked out that we both fish very similar. We like fishing deep. We like fishing plackies. And yeah, so we kind of work really well together and we've stayed together a couple of times since. And it's been really good. So we thought we'll put our heads together on this one. And yeah, I don't know, 3 weeks out or something, he hit me up and he's like, what have you got? And I said, to be honest, mate, I haven't even started thinking about it.
Yep.
I'll get onto it. So I messaged a couple of the Tassie locals on Instagram, Jack Gillespie and Will Thorpe.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were super generous with the information. They both sent me some maps and stuff. And it was really just to give us a good starting point and kind of cross-reference all the information that Joel had and I had and put it all together and kind of come up with a plan for pre-fish and what lures and stuff we kind of needed and we could stock up on them and get things underway. So, yeah, for this one on the pre-fish, me and Joel were staying together at the event. So we kind of worked out between ourselves, like he let me know what areas he wanted to look at. I let him know what areas I wanted to look at. So we were kind of covering as much water as possible.
Yeah.
And we went from there. So there was a pretty much straight across on Lorch there's an oyster farm across on the other side of the river there. And it looked like a really nice edge across there. And it was a real glass morning. And so I started heading across there. And next minute, the fins are starting to slap the sand. I'm like, shit, I can't get in there. So
right.
I was still 100, 200 meters off the shore. So I was like, well, I can't get in there. So I'm not gonna fish. I threw a bent around a little bit, had a few follows. And so I kind of scrapped that idea. And there were some old racks just up from the oyster farm there. So I went across to them. I found a nice little flat on the inside of them. And I started throwing jerkbaits around there. And I got 2 fish relatively quickly, not too bad sized ones, and lost a couple of fish actually in the racks there. Not lures, just pulled hooks on them,
Okay.
I had the information I needed from that. And then I worked along a little bit and I found a nice reef that runs out off that same point there. And apparently it's a pretty popular reef, that one. I didn't know at the time, but I thought I'd struck my own little piece of gold, but apparently not. But I think I pulled a fish on a crab there as well. And then from there, I kind of didn't need to know anything more from that area. So I worked further towards the front, and there's a big flat out in front of, there's like a place up there they call Pelican Bay, and there's like a channel that runs up into that and so forth. And I know Joel was heading up that way in the morning, so I wasn't going to go up there. But out in front of that, there's a nice big flat there with a heap of racks and stuff. Now, racks isn't kind of my style of fishing, so as much as I wanted to fish them, I kind of didn't. So I just stayed out on the flat, probably 50 to 100 metres off the racks there, and threw the jerkbait around. It was probably about 800-900 millimetres of water, so quite shallow, and it was very clear at that time. I picked up a fish on a jerkbait again relatively quickly, and the one thing I really wanted to stretch my legs and get a visual of the ground and everything, because it was quite weedy. So I stood up on my kayak and I was spooking fish everywhere, like big brim. I was just seeing them go everywhere through the weed, and I'm like, geez, there's a lot of fish here. Like, you don't really notice them from sitting down on your kayak, but standing up, I was just spooking so many fish, and I probably drifted through. The tide was pretty slack, so it was quite clear at that point in time. So I slowly drifted through for about 300 metres, and I just spooked fish the whole way, and I'm talking like kilo fish just everywhere, just spooking them. They were digging in the sand, in the mud holes, and so I was like, geez, this is looking really promising, this little area. So I didn't throw another lure at them, nothing, I don't think. I saw what I needed to see. I think about when I finished that little drift there, I had Joel come over to me from the other side of the river, and I was like, well, I'm going to go right up to the front. I want to fish the reef up there. That was a bit of the intel I got from a couple of the boys. And there's an old jetty up there on the other side anyway as well, which I wanted to look at. So I headed up that way, and I think Joel stayed behind, and he ended up fishing plackies around there, and I think he picked up quite a few fish there.
Right.
Pretty quickly, so that was handy. And got up there, and the tide was now running pretty hard up the front there, so worked the reef areas there, which I was first visual at it. I was live scoping in there, in the channel there. There's a heap of like coral bommies and stuff. And I was like, gee, this looks really good. This was really familiar to back home when I fished the Coorong. It's pretty much identical with how I fish back home. I think the tide was running quite hard at that point, so I was throwing big crabs around, and I had a couple of hits pretty quickly. I think I picked up 2 fish there, and I reckon they were both about 1 kilo.
Right.
Like, okay, this is good. I didn't want to flog the area, but I wanted to work out different methods of catching these fish in case they stopped wanting one method.
Sure.
So I put the muss on, and I picked up a fish on the muss there, and then I threw around a few different types of plackies without luck. So I thought, all right, that's enough for me. And it was about 1 o'clock at that point in time, so the tide was running out quite hard. I was supposed to be back at launch to head off with the other boys at 2 o'clock, and it was about a 6 or 7K paddle into the current. And I was like, oh, crap, I'm not going to make this. I still wanted to fish one more spot, so I messaged me mate Lee. I'm like, mate, I'm not going to make it back in time. Just give me half an hour. I just want to fish one more spot while I'm up here. So I paddled across the other side, and there's a jetty that comes out, a little private jetty there. So I went over there, and the flats had just finished kind of draining off. They were still draining off pretty hard, but they were definitely a lot lower than what they were. So I pitched a 3.5-inch bloodworm grub on a 1/8 right up on the edge of the drop-off where the water was running off into this little bit of an eddy, and bang, picked up a fish straight away. All right, another cast in, bang, picked up a fish. And then I think I picked up like 6 fish in about 10 minutes there.
Right.
And I was like, all right, we're onto something here kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not just the area, but the lure as well. We're on. So saw what I needed to see, and yeah, that was it. Paddled back to launch, and yeah, had to come up with a plan.
Very good, mate. Okay, I have just two questions. First of all, you're running the Garmin?
I got the Lowrance, the active target.
The active target? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And you were using that, it sounds, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like in 900 or 900 mil of water with must-have perspective mode on?
Yes, yep. I have the scout mode, it's called, on the Lowrance.
Scout mode.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so with that in the shallow water, I could definitely see fish moving around and so forth. But on that day, specifically on the pre-fish, I didn't really need it because I was standing up on my kayak anyway. But I definitely used it on competition days.
Okay. So this show will come out in terms of times of recording, this will come out 2 weeks after you and I are speaking right now. But there is one that I did with Morgove when he came third at, I can't remember which location it was. He used his live, the Garmin one, in a different way. So you have to stay tuned for that one.
Okay, interesting.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. I've watched quite a few of his videos on his Garmin there, and he's definitely got it dialed in.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were using the grubs or any of the lures down there, were you running any scents?
Yes, I run the S Factor mainly. Yeah, that's just a proven fish catcher. I don't cake my lures in it. I just want enough to kind of hide my personal scent, any scents I've got on my hand, and just give them something that they'll hold onto the plastic a bit more.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, so do I. Yep.
All right, moving on to comp day, mate. Tell us how your Saturday went.
Yeah, so comp day, the plan was to pretty much, I wanted to hit that flat straight away. I really thought that it might cop a bit more pressure than what it did. So I wanted to kind of get there first, and straight off from the launch, I was probably about 6th or 7th back, and I'm like, someone's going to pull up on this for sure. And that, sure enough, everyone kept going or went elsewhere. And I pulled up there and started fishing it was quite windy that day, actually. It was very windy, so I had to pole down. I've got a big stakeout pole I've used. I haven't got a power pole on my old kayak yet.
Yeah, fair enough. That's okay.
So yeah, just staked down and started casting the jerk baits around. It was definitely a lot slower, and I think that had a bit to do with the tide, which I kind of worked out as the day went on. But most times you go fishing somewhere, the incoming tide, when the water's really up over the flats, it's usually better. But in Tassie, I found the outgoing tide to be a lot better. So we had to just discovered that throughout the day. But yeah, I managed to pick up 2 fish on the jerk baits there pretty quick, but it was definitely a lot slower with less bites. And then, what happened after that?
What jerk baits were you running?
I was running the Daiwa shallow double clutch in the chrome belly color. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really rate that lure. It casts like a bullet, and they were loving it over there. I caught a lot of fish on pre-fishing at Little Swanport as well. I did really well on that lure.
Yeah, cool.
Just hang on a sec, mate. Yeah, so it took me a little while to come across my third. The bite definitely slowed down, but I started pitching the 3.5-inch bloodworm grubber around from the day before. Although it was quite shallow, it was probably only 900 millimeters to a meter on the incoming tide there. I was still using a 1/8 jig head and fishing it quite aggressively. It was really weedy through there, but I wasn't really fouling up. It must have been the type of weed. The jig head and the plastic was pulling through the weed quite nicely, so it was working quite well. And I pulled my third fish on that, which was about, I think, 800 to 900 grams.
Yep.
So I think at this point in time, I had a couple of fish at 800, 900 grams and a smaller fish as well, which I really wanted to get rid of.
Yeah. Okay. So you got your third fish. What's going through your mind now? You're obviously thinking, all right, now I need some bigger ones. So where'd you move on?
So my bigger fish spot I planned was the spots further up the front of that little jetty and the reef section. Now, on day one, they shortened the time of the session to 1 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah, due to the wind, and it was supposed to get really, really windy, which it did. But yeah, so I pretty much had to make a choice. I wanted to fish that spot on the outgoing tide, but the way that the time was working and I needed time to get back, it was going to be hard. So I knew getting up there, I'm probably not going to get the fish at where I want to, but I thought it's definitely worth the risk anyway, seeing the fish I caught up there the day before. So I went up there and I knew I didn't have time to fish both spots, the jetty and the reef. So there was already guys over at the reef anyway, and it's quite a small area. So I went over to the jetty, and I think David Shanahan was in there as well.
Yeah.
So he was pretty much bang on where I wanted to fish. So I kind of waited for him to drift off a little bit, and he ended up moving up about 100 metres. So I thought, all right, now's my time. So I kind of come in, and I think probably my first cast I pitched up into where I wanted to cast. I plunked a nice fish, and that was a kilo fish. So I was like, yep,
nice.
All right, it was definitely worth the paddle up here. So
yeah,
I would say by that time I probably had about 2.7, 2.8 kilos from memory.
Yeah.
I think I picked up another upgrade up there as well.
Yep.
Just a small one. Yeah. So I reckon I think I stayed there for about 45 minutes before I knew I had to start paddling back, because I knew it would take me at least an hour to paddle back going back from the day before.
Sure.
I wanted time to fish that flat again on the outgoing tide. So I shot straight back to that flat, and I think I had about an hour's worth of fishing there, and it was really blowing up at this stage. So it was funny because everyone else, I think, on the field in that area was fishing on the sheltered side of the river there, trying to get out the wind, and I was like, nah, I'm not having any of that. So I stayed on my flat side, and it was just copping wind. I had salt water spraying up over my reels all the time.
Oh.
It was quite horrible.
Terrible.
Yeah, I had squeaky wheels the next day.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
But it was definitely worth it. I think I pulled another great upgrade, which is a good kicker, which was a 1.14.
Right, okay.
Reasonably quick. And then I spent the next half an hour catching like pretty decent size, 800-900 grammers, just one after the other, but no substantial upgrades. So I was quite happy at that point in time. I thought, in my head, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've probably got about 2.8, 2.9 kilos. Probably going to need at least 3 to be in the top 10.
Yep.
Going by the past results.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, I'm going to start working my way back, and I'll just keep fishing along this flat, which it was a long flat. It was probably a kilometre long, to be honest.
Sure.
So, yeah, I just worked my way back, pitching casts up into the wind, and I kept catching fish and fish and fish. I'm like, all right, cool. That was all on the grub again too.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Did you upsize your weight when you're casting into the wind, or
nah,
you stay with the 8?
I stayed with the 1/8. I was punching that pretty well up into the wind far enough, and considering at that point in time the flats had drained off and it was probably only 800 millimetres to 900 millimetres deep, I didn't really think I needed to put a 1/6 on.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was funny because I do fish my plastics quite aggressively.
Okay, and
So
explain that to me.
pretty much cast out and just rip them up like a big double hop, triple hop, really get that plastic up and just grab the fish's attention.
Yep.
And then let it sit down. I'll probably give it like a 3 to 5 second pause.
Sure.
And then repeat. And it was funny because a lot of the times the fish hit it was when I was ripping it up in the air and I just finished that second twitch, and they must have been coming up out the weed and smacking it.
Wow.
Because quite often when I was striking the fish, I was pulling them out the water and they were leaping out the water.
How good's that?
Yeah.
How good's that?
Yeah.
Mate,
yeah.
It sounds like you're chasing flathead.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty fun fishing, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it for day one. I shot back to launch and
come in with just over 3 kilos, which had you in, I think you said 5th place overnight, which is a pretty cool place to be.
Yeah, I was absolutely ecstatic to crack 3 kilos. I really wanted to get a 3 kilo bag in Tassie. Didn't get it at Little Swanport, so to get that 3 kilos on day one, I was pretty happy.
Definitely. And look, Dylan, who was looks like he was in 1st place overnight, not that far in front, like 200 grams in front, very achievable. You're trying to chase it down, so.
Yeah, I think I spoke to Crosser that night, and he might have been sitting 6th or 7th, like not far behind me from memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we were discussing it, and we're like, these boys we can definitely chase these boys down. Like, we only need one or two of them to have a not as great a day as day one, and we can really leap them here. So,
very good. All right, mate, let's roll around. So day 2 on the Sunday. How was the Sunday for you?
The Sunday was awesome. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, no, the conditions were great. We had, I think it was like pretty much mirror calm day 2 to start. So that was a lot different. The plan for me was to just rinse and repeat day 1.
Sure.
Knowing that I had that extra hour on the end of the day was going to allow me more time to fish the spots I wanted to fish a bit more methodically.
Mm.
But in saying that as well, the tides were going to be another half an hour behind. So I really had to work the tides and fish the spots I wanted to fish on the right tides. So I knew if I wanted to head up to my jetty and reef area again, I wasn't going to be able to fish them on an outgoing tide because I wouldn't have enough time to get back. So I just had to suck it up. But yeah, for day 2, we went straight to the flat again, and it was noticeably really quiet.
Right.
I fished jerkbaits for probably an hour.
Yeah.
And nothing. I didn't get a follow. I didn't get a hit. I'm like, gee, something's not right here. And I saw there was a couple of guys around me. I saw Dylan and Mitch in the racks there, and they were pulling good fish. And I was like, shit, all right. The mind games really start to play on you. Like, is it going to happen for me today? Yeah, it's really funny fishing and tournament fishing, the mental demons that you have to battle on the water, and you've just got to, try and stay positive, but it's not always that way. But I was in a really positive mindset. And I'm like, if I'm just going to keep fishing how I fish, and things will happen.
Yeah,
so
cool.
Went away with the jerkbait, and I went back to the grub. I think I pitched, because what I was doing is I was poling down kind of out on the flat and casting in towards the racks, and that's generally how I fished that flat.
Mm.
But I was like, something's not right here. So I kind of pitched it out the other way and pitched it out towards a drop-off. And I got my first fish, and that ate it on the drop-off. And I was like, all right, okay, something's different today, but that's all right. We'll make it work. And so I got my first fish, and I think he was about, 670, 650 grams or something.
Sure.
I think within the next couple of casts, I got another one doing the same thing, which is, I think he was around 800 grams from memory.
Yeah, that's getting better.
It's getting better. I'm like, all right, cool. We just need to get one more, and we've got our bag.
Yeah.
I kind of knew I needed at least 2.8 kilos to probably hold on to a top 10. So
sure,
that was the goal for me. At least get 2.8. We'll see what happens from there. I think I bumped into Crosser after that. He came over to me and asked him how he's going, and he said, I've got 3 little ones. And I was like, all right, bugger. I said, I've only got 2 as well, man. It's definitely a lot slower today. So I just had to stick it out. I think I picked up a 3rd fish not long after that, which was only I didn't even weigh that fish. It was only a 31 tipper, which looks absolutely tiny after you've been catching keggers in Tassie.
Yeah.
But I persisted for a bit longer, and just I wanted to wait for that tide to be a bit more progressive down the front. So when I got down there, it was a bit closer to being right. So I kind of stuck it out there for probably another hour and didn't really pick up any more fish. And then I eventually picked up another nice fish, which went 1 kilo. So I was like, all right, cool.
Okay.
We've got probably, 2.3, 2.5 maybe.
Sure.
Yeah, so I was feeling a lot better after that. I was like, all right, cool. It's early morning still. I've got 2.5 kilo. We can definitely build on this for the rest of the day. We just got to find those good fish. So it was about that time, and I shot back up to my jetty there, and the water was really, really high. And I don't know if it was because there was no wind pushing the water out that day, and the tide was definitely half an hour behind, but the water was still a lot higher. And I was like, okay, something's going to have to change things up here. I can't fish how I quite want to fish. So I picked up a little fish on the flat there in about 200 mil of water, which was pretty cool. And then I started just working around the flats, looking at the drop-offs, and there was just this random weed patch there. I was like, all right, may as well have a cast at it. So yeah, threw a cast in, and there must have been a kilo fish sitting in it because, clunked the kilo fish out of that one. So I was pretty happy there.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. He took me right up on the flat and I was fighting him in real shallow water. So that was pretty good fun. That, once again, that was on the grub. I think I just fished the grub all day after that, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
There was no point changing things up because it was just a matter of finding the fish. The fish were loving it. So, yeah, after that, the tide slackened off after that and it went real slack. And I noticed over at the reef area where there was probably 4 or 5 guys consistently fishing that area, they kind of moved off from the reef, which I kind of assumed they'd moved off to wait for the tide to start turning so they could fish the reefs more productive again. And during that period, the fish were probably up on the flats anyway. So I thought, bugger it, I'm going to head over there and have a look and put the livescope in and see how many fish are actually around the reefs. I did that and I noticed the fish weren't really on the reef. So I'm like, all right, they're all up on the flats feeding at this point in time. So I worked my way in and just to the left of me on the drop off up on the flat near a reef there, I noticed a heap of bait just start flickering out the water.
Yeah.
So I just pitched the grub in and bang, another 40 tipper. I was like,
right.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's funny because I was like, 40 tipper. And then I weighed it and it was only 890 grams. And I was like, you're kidding me.
What?
Yeah, it was the skinniest 40 tipper you've ever seen. I was like,
ripped off.
I've been completely ripped off here. But it was still an upgrade. So I probably had 2.8 then, I reckon.
2.8. Yeah.
So, yeah, I was pretty stoked with that. Actually, I probably had 2.8 before that. So I probably had a little bit of an upgrade. But, yeah, probably 2.9, 3 kilos by then, okay. I reckon.
Yeah, okay. I reckon you got one more upgrade in you at least.
I did get a very nice upgrade. I got 2 more upgrades, actually.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, so after that, the tide was slack and I thought, all right. I had a really good time back at the flat on the outgoing tide the day before. I want to get back there and be there for the outgoing tide and be able to spend more time there today. So I thought while the tide's slack, I'm going to paddle back so I don't have to paddle as hard. So I got back to my flat and I think in transit the tide probably started running, so it pretty much worked out perfect. I rolled into the section, I got the fish in the morning, and I think within my first couple of casts, I got a very nice upgrade of 1.24 kilos.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I got rid of that runt 40 tipper.
Yeah, got rid of that measly 40 tipper.
And replaced it with what was probably a 44, 45 tipper.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, the Hobie ruler was too small for it anyway, so.
Yeah, gold.
Yeah. So I was absolutely ecstatic. Like, had the full shakes at this point. Like,
good.
There's no better feeling than that, I reckon. Like,
exactly.
I kind of knew at that point in time, like, I was probably going to hold on to a top 5.
Yeah.
Unless something really drastic happened. So, yeah, I was just ecstatic. So, yeah, I continued fishing there. I just kept pulling fish after fish. They were all about 900 to a kilo. Like, it was crazy.
Must have been terrible.
Oh, mate, it was unreal. And it's real funny, the difference of quality of fish as well. Like, I had 39.5 tipper and a 38 tipper that were both bang on a kilo. And it was like, all right, that's one's chunky, one's skinny. So it got to a point not long after I got another fish and he went, I think he was 1.06 kilos.
Mm.
And I was like, geez, which one am I going to throw out here? I said, one's 39.5, one's 38. They're both weighing bang on a kilo. So I was like, I think I weighed each fish like 5 times. I was like, I've got to get this right. Like, it's going to, as you know, in these tournaments, 10 grams can make a difference. So I've got to take the time. I've got a good bag. Take the time, get this right, make sure you release the right fish. So I just kept watching the screen on my scales. And every time I weighed one of the fish, it kind of flicked. It flicked up and then back to a kilo.
Yep.
And the other one flicked down and then back to a kilo. I was like, all right. So
there it is.
It was funny because I ended up releasing the 39.5 tipper for the 38 tipper.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. That was it. I was like, all right, I don't want to be late. I think.
Yeah, got a good bag.
Bag. Probably pretty unlikely to upgrade it anymore. Last thing I want to do is be late. So, yeah, headed back to launch and that was the day.
That was a day. All right, mate. I've just got a couple of questions. So just the standard things like what sort of leaders were you running for the weekend?
I was running this. I think I ran 6 pound all weekend there.
Yep.
Apart from when I was fishing the reef area, I think I fished 8 pound.
Sure.
Now I was running the Daiwa X-Link.
Yep.
Yeah, really rate that braid. I caught some good fish on it now in the Coorong, and the abrasion resistance is really good. But I did run out of the 6 pound after pre-fish, I think. So I went to a platypus, not braid, sorry, the leader. I went to the platypus leader I had as well in the 6 pound.
Sure.
Which it's also a great leader. And I pretty much used that for the rest of that comp.
Yeah, okay. Is that a fluorocarbon or a nylon leader?
A fluorocarbon.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I forgot what the platypus one's called, sorry. But
that's right. We might look it up.
And then with my braid, I run 8 pound Tasline on all my rods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And how are you finding that?
Nah, absolutely love it. Before Marty come out with the 8 pound, I used to run the 12 pound Tasline, and that was great.
Sure. Yeah.
And then once he developed the 8 pound, I went straight to that, and I can get a bit more distance on my casting, and it's still super strong.
Yeah, that's awesome. And from what I understand, they manufacture that in Australia. I'm not sure where his plant is. I guess it's in Victoria somewhere.
Yep.
Very cool. Mate, the other comment that I wanted to make is across the 2 days, it seems like your kind of spot management, your tide management was pretty important. Like you kind of had to manage your day to fish where you wanted to fish at the right time. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, 100%, mate. 100%. I was constantly battling in my head when to leave a spot to get to a spot at the right time. Yeah. And I was fighting it every day because the tides moved back half an hour every day, and then weather conditions and trying to punch back 6 kilometres into the current. I also had to really time my paddle back to launch as well. So no, it was definitely crucial.
Yeah. Okay. I reckon that's a pretty good rundown. I like the fact that, and this is one of the funny things, like we go to these comps and you probably go to the tackle shop and buy, 1,000 lures, and then you basically run, from what I can imagine, you threw a bent minnow, but you basically ran a double clutch and a grub most of the weekend.
Yeah, I think, by day 2 competition, I used 2 lures, and it was a Z-Man 3.5-inch bloodworm grub and the double clutch jerkbait, and that was it. That's all I threw day 2.
Yeah.
That's what pre-fish is for. You can take a bunch of lures out on pre-fish, and you can narrow that down to 5 or 6 lures that are working, and then day 1 you really work out what's really working for you, and then by day 2 you've really got it dialed in.
Yeah, fish to your strengths on day 2.
Yeah, yep, definitely. And I'm super bad for taking every bloody lure that I've got too. So
yep, I'm right there with you on that, mate. I've got every lure since 1992 in my kayak, and we used 3 that we bought last week. So
that's funny.
All righty then. So, mate, that's a great rundown. It sounds like you had a great time down there. Now, you ended up in second place.
Yep.
What'd you get to take home for second place?
What is it, $915, I think?
Yep, perfect.
The best part about it is the little Hobie trophy. So
yeah, okay.
I've got that sitting on the mantelpiece at home at the moment, and I get to look at it every day. So
very good.
Yeah, that's the best part. And then a little prize pack as well with some goodies in there. And the Australian Championship spot, the best part. Yeah, I'm absolutely ecstatic about that. I had such a good time at Malakuta last year, and just to take that weight off the shoulders so early in the season, and really, it'll probably make me fish better, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's a great feeling.
Yeah.
So, great feeling. And look, I'm looking forward to Camden Haven. I think it's going to be a great venue, and it'll be really, really interesting to see what comes out of that place.
Yeah, I didn't get there last year, but already started researching, and it's funny. I actually found an old, Hobie video last night from 2011.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, saw some old heads on that one. I reckon I saw you and Benny Harrison and Brett and a few of the boys, Crozza.
Yeah, definitely.
No,
well, maybe what have we got? We got 2 shows on the Camden Haven. You can go back and have a listen to those.
I'll have to look at the second one as well. So I love the old YouTube videos. It's fantastic.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, mate. I reckon that's a pretty good rundown of everything. Before we shoot off, who would you like to give a shout out to?
Probably firstly, my wife and my children, to let me go away with, I don't know, 10 or 11 days, I think it was, by the time we got home with the travel on the Spirit and stuff, and stay at home and look after the young kids and that. Yeah, I definitely owe her some brownie points there, and I'll be making them up for a while. And probably all the boys have stayed with at the house. We had such a good crew. Had a great time. I've become a wine drinker.
I'm right.
Yeah, the boys were tipping wine down my throat by the end. Didn't get enough bottles, so that was fun. Definitely Crozza for his help. The two Tassie boys, really appreciate what the information they gave us, but definitely helped give me spots to start and lures to select and stuff. And then Chris and the Hobie team. I mean, as a tournament director myself of Bream Master SA, seeing the effort and that goes on with those guys, and having the experience of what goes on behind the scene, like to run an event in Tasmania and get all that gear over there and the logistical side of things, it's an outstanding effort. So, yeah, Chris has become a really good friend of mine. So, yeah, I appreciate everything those guys do. And probably lastly, my sponsors, Pro Lure Australia, which in fact this was the Pro Lure round, so I had some good sponsor karma there.
Definitely.
Yeah. Estuary Clothing Co., a mate, Ryan Ottens, who owns Trade School Australia. He looks after me a bit as well. And LXD Sunglasses, helping me see better on the water.
How good is that? All right, mate, we're going to leave all that stuff there, but just one final thing before we head off. And now, should all my scheduling go to plan, mate, you'll have an event coming out just a couple of days after this goes to air. So do you want to tell people what's going on there?
Yeah, so we've got the Round 3 Hobie affiliated event of Bream Master SA at Nelson in Victoria, on the border of South Australia and Victoria. So, yeah, it should be a good event. We've got Hobie Angler of the Year points up for grab at that one, as well as Bream Master Angler of the Year points. And there should be a couple of Australian Championship spots up for grabs there. We've got, I think, at point of recording, we've got 43 competitors down for that one. We're hoping to get a bit more than that. So, yeah, we'll take any last-minute entries.
What's your deadline? Given this will be the Tuesday morning, should all things go to plan, can people still enter?
No.
You've blown it. All right, you just have to watch from. Yeah, they'll have to watch from the sides.
Yeah, they'll have to watch from the sides. But yeah, that should be a great event. So yeah, get down there.
Very good.
Even if guys want to tune into our Bream Master SA Facebook page, they can watch the live weigh-ins and get around the anglers on that platform. That'd be great.
Very good. Very good. All right, mate. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on again. Good to see you up on the podium. And, mate, I'll see you at the next round.
Thanks, mate. Hopefully it happens more often. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. All right. If you're in the market for a new fishing kayak or looking to make some upgrades to your existing kayak, or possibly looking at kayak fishing tournaments, then HWS is the place to go. They have a full range of Hobie kayaks, stock the latest kayak accessories, and are really dialed in when it comes to the best kayak fishing setup for the casual fisher and tournament angler. hws.com.au, online or in store at Shop 3/638 Pacific Highway, Belmont. Now, James offers free delivery on Hobie kayaks across all of Great East Sydney, Central Coast and Hunter. Now, like I said for last week, I don't think you can go past the Lovick pants. Like, as we lead into winter, I know I've plugged these quite a bit, but I don't think it matters whether you're in a boat or a kayak, but particularly for kayaks. If you want to keep comfortable when you're out in the water, then definitely have a look at these. I mean, I've had mine for, I want to say 6 or 7 years, and I might use them maybe 10 times a year. Not a lot, but when I use them, when I stay dry, particularly in windy, cold conditions, you can't beat them. So check out the Lovick pants on hws.com.au. All right. So coming in first place, leading the competition from day one with 3 fish for 3.22 kilos, backing it up with the biggest bag for the competition of 3.59, giving him 6.81 kilos for his 6 fish. I've got Dylan Pace. Mate, welcome to the show.
Thanks a heap, Deethy. Very happy to be here finally.
Mate, it's really, really good to be talking to you. And this is such I think, a monumental win, like leading from day one. Big fish, mate. I'm looking forward to hearing how you went about it.
Oh, happy to talk about it. Reliving this, it's always good. Even just hearing those numbers rattled off with my name after it, I'm like, oh, I did that, didn't I?
Right.
Something pretty. Oh, I'm very proud of that result. Very happy with it.
Yeah, and so you should be. Look, like I said, leading from day one, I think you're just 10 grams ahead of Corey Lean, and then backing it up with an even bigger bag. I think you're the biggest bag by about 300 grams-ish. Yeah, what a way to bring it home.
Oh, couldn't ask for a better finish on day two. Like, you can only imagine how well I slept on the Saturday night.
Yeah.
Things were tense. I was like every time I'd tie an FG, I'd be like, no, that's not going to cut it. And then rip it off, redo it, thinking just, oh, well, getting paranoid, let's just say that. Didn't think I'd back it up, and I thought I was going to choke hard, but, well, I got rid of the first day curse, so I can sit in first one day again and won't have to worry as hard.
So good, so good. All right, let's get straight into it, mate. Tell us about your pre-fish and all that sort of stuff. How did you go?
Yeah, so pre-fish, didn't hit the water like ultra early. We got there pretty much just on sunrise. Launched at Melshell's Oyster Shack, and yeah, if you haven't launched there before, that ramp, a bit sketchy, sort of a long way down. But once you hit the river, you got the choice of going up to sort of Malting Lagoon or downstream. And with the Swan being so big, at the time anyway, I was like going to draw a line from Melshell's across and be like, I am going downstream, sort of limit my space in the arena and try and nut that out. Well, I didn't stick to that exactly in the end, but so pretty much went down and just took it easy. I just wanted to see the place more than anything. Fished a lot of racks, and the really interesting thing I kind of first noticed was just how tidal this system was. So it's going over a lot of flats that might have been in, say, 50 or 60 centimetres of water, and then all of a sudden dawned on me, I'm like, this place is just going to drain. So with that, I kind of didn't think about the top of the high too much, due to the fact that particularly on the Saturday, we wouldn't have a lot of high tide sort of rolling into the river. So I sort of focused on the racks that were sitting in slightly deeper water, and it took me a while to find racks that were holding fish. But by the time I'd sort of travelled a few kilometres, I found a set that at that moment they were sitting in 1 to 1.1 metres. And straight away, I was just in la land, pitched in a cranker crab, hooked an absolute truck of a fish, got absolutely annihilated, lost my crab. But I was like, oh, cool, okay, those racks hold fish. And that was sort of the beginning of like just formulating a plan. I went up, ended up just pitching in some, say, risky critters, caught a few more smaller fish anywhere up to 800 grams, like respectable fish, and just got out of there and sort of kept going downriver. And I was sort of about halfway down towards the front by that point. And what was really apparent was the amount of prawns that were just skipping, because there was a lot of bream and tiny, micro, horrific salmon chasing them. And pretty much, like for those who haven't been down in Tassie, the amount of like, I'll say pissant little salmon and tailor is something to behold. It can be annoying, but you'd see the bream that would make that kissing sound. It was pretty apparent where they were. Tried pitching a few things at them, struggles. You'd throw a bent minnow, they'd follow it, but ultimately I ended up putting on Bass Day sugar pens, and just every single time you saw a prawn get eaten, put a sugar pen on it and you catch fish. So that was sort of in the back of my mind. And over the course of the day, I sort of went into Pelican Bay, went down to the front of the system, and ultimately I caught up with Mitch McMaster a bit later. I ended up catching quite a few fish on mud banks on jerkbaits, thought that may come into play, and we just wanted to end up seeing the system. So we actually went up right into towards Malting Lagoon and went into the Swan River itself, which was quite a mission. Got kind of stuck in the mud for a few hours, came back with some horrific tides, and it was pretty much dark by the time we got back to Melshell's, I reckon. So saw the river, put some plans together, but ultimately what I found was the size of fish I encountered wasn't anything terrific. So with that in my mind, I kind of was very open to just mixing it up a lot for day one. So I retired, I dropped my leader size thinking maybe these fish could be a little fussier. They weren't. We'll go into that in a minute. But yeah, I sort of just thought I need to find areas with current, with relatively good structure nearby, and sort of just somewhere to hold fish as they transit from those shallow flats, because a lot of the flats do ultimately dry up on the low tide. Right.
Okay. So based on your pre-fish, how many rods did you take into day one, and what you start with?
So day one, I would have gone in with 6 rods. I doubled up with Miller rod brawlers, and pretty much to start with, I had a brawler with a bait junkie risky critter. I had another one rigged with a cranker crab. Oh, you're testing me here. I definitely had a rub freak rigged with a hurricane sprat, a twitch freak with a jerkbait, and another twitch freak it would have been with a sugar pen. And I reckon on something else I might have had, it must have been an OSP Durga, I reckon.
Okay. I don't know what that is, but you'll have to enlighten me to that.
Well, I'll be talking about that. That earned me some money, that lure. But and of note, I'll talk like say leaders as well. So I sort of set up my rods for fishing either flats or racks. That's what I was very much going to be devoted to for the 2 days, and I kind of picked out a few spots on Google Earth that I didn't even really fish on pre-fish, but there was a few areas, say, that on pre-fish I noticed. Well, I should mention on the pre-fish morning it was glassy. So a lot of the time I was not fishing. I was more just looking for fish, and the only big fish I encountered were ones that were eye candy, saw them with my eyes, and I kind of just saw them and left that zone and went back. Well, I went back on day one, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is pretty cool. But with that in mind, I did drop my leaders 3 and 4 pound on my flats rods, and then I just went an easygoing 10 pound on all of my racks rods.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's an interesting spread. You got 3 pound on one rod leading all the way up to 10 pounds. So I look forward to hearing about how that played out.
For sure.
All right. Let's roll into day one. Tell us how day one started.
Yeah, so day one was sort of the mad dash, and I had quite a hike to go. So I wanted to get down to a few particular sets of racks. So I kind of eyed off 4 very different sets of racks that kind of had there was a few that went across the current, a few that ran with it, but ultimately the main reason I chose them was because they were just in a really good transit zone for big fish. When we were there on day one, we had a little bit of running in the morning, and I knew fish would be sitting high on the flats and adjacent to deep water, and they would be comfortable there because ultimately they could spill off into those deeper channels when the water started dropping. And it was literally first cast I got, it would have been a fish about 1 kilo. And I don't think you could ever complain smacking one like that on your first cast in the morning. And second cast is when things got interesting. It was really windy. It was probably blowing, I think Chris was saying as we left, it was about 18.5 knots steady with 22 knot gusts. So I kid you, it was borderline the comp was potentially going to be called off. So at the end of the day, we're happy to be fishing, but how I had to approach these racks was by power poling down about 10 metres off them and using the wind to drift plastics and crabs back under. So opted obviously for fishing brawlers, 10 pound leader, and luckily these racks are forgiving. So if they do rub you in there, you're pretty okay. You can sort of gently ease those fish back out. There's not too many oysters on the leases themselves. But yeah, second cast, I've sort of power poled out, drifted a plastic under, hooked up, and it was an absolute truck of a fish. Tried to pole it out, and it would have been probably that 43, 44 fork mark. So one that would have been handy, and unfortunately it ended up it did straighten out my jig head completely. So it was a bait junkie heavy gauge hook, which I've never had a fish straighten, and sort of had it at the side of the kayak. But I had lost my long net, as I was talking about earlier to you, and lost that at Anson's Bay a few days beforehand, and had to try get this really big fish in a very tiny net, and it was too big for the net itself, and well, that was that. So I thought that fish might cost me.
No, I mean, look, you started the comp, you absolutely should think it cost you. Turns out it didn't, but wow.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, it would have been next cast under that same spot, pulled another fish. It would have been probably about an 800 gram fish, and ended up encountering a couple that similar size for the next half an hour in the racks before it literally just got too sketchy to fish. So I had to make the choice to leave those leases and head down towards the front of the system onto a few flats.
Okay. Yeah, cool. All right. So you got your bag really early, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I had a bag. I think I had a bag of about 2.7 kilos by would have been 8:30. So all in all, I was very happy to be sitting on that pretty early on in the day with plenty of time to sort of make a few other things happen.
Yeah, cool. All right. And up till there, you've got your fish on plastic and a crankbait, is that right?
Yeah, so bait junkie risky critters rigged on a 1/20th heavy gauge hook. And I did mix up colours a bit. First thing in the morning when it was really overcast, I was fishing the fish oil colour, sort of like a motor oil with some black flake in it. I thought it might stand out a bit more in that low light. And once I did start stinging a few fish in those leases, I noticed the bite went off, so I did go to it's the skin shrimp, that really translucent pinky silver sort of.
Oh, yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah, and then when they went off that, cranker crabs, just nothing special, but those, that combination did quite well over both days in the racks.
That's amazing. I can't believe you straightened one of those Daiwa bait junkies. Like they're not a fine game hook. Like they're sharp point.
Because I've had it where you might roll a hook point or something, like that's going to happen. But to have one open up completely, I was pretty gobsmacked. But I guess those big fish don't end up in bags too often, do they? So it's just another one of the fish that got away.
Definitely. I want to talk more about the net, mate. What's happening with the net situation post comp?
So I have now luckily gone and purchased a nice long-handled net. But if anyone is up the Ansons River and finds one of those great medium-sized Berkeley folding kayak nets, you can have it.
Yeah, good on you. Welcome. All right, let's carry on. So you got about 2.7-ish in the bag. Where'd you go from there?
So I went down to the front now. The thing, I'll go back to what I was talking about in pre-fish, how we had some really glassy conditions. I knew there was one channel down right near the entrance where fish were coming in on the high tide, and I knew that would also set up perfectly when that tide turned to act as a bit of a channel for any fish that want to run back out to the sea. So I kind of just power poled down in a spot that was very manageable with the wind. Like I tucked in around the corner of one of the points down near the mouth, pretty much just power poled in the spot. And straight away I was like, I'm going to test this. I'm going to sit on this spot for about 20 minutes and see if I find trans and schools of fish coming through. That worked really well. Problem being, every single cast you'd catch a fish, but most of the time it was either a salmon or a tiny tailor. But every, say, 10 casts, you would have a good school of bream come through and you might get a chance to nail one or two. But that was well and truly enough. They were a much better class of fish, and they were sort of either side of a kilo, but a lot of really good fish in that sort of 970 to 990. So it was tediously upgrading for a while, and ultimately I sort of switched from throwing the risky critter there for a bit, but what I noticed was there was a lot of mullet sort of sitting up on the surface, sipping krill in the run-in tide. So I ended up putting on the old hurricane sprat it was the gun colour, and sort of just fished that on a 1/20th head and just let it sort of drift down, touching any sand divots, weed pockets, anything like that. Sort of just sitting in there and shaking it up really high in the water column before dropping it back down. And that worked really well and ended up clunking a couple of fish. I think they might have pulled a 119 and another one a bit over a kilo in quick succession, and that sort of made up the bulk of my better fish for day one.
Right. Okay. And of all the plastic, why'd you choose a sprat?
Now, it just matched the exact same sort of bait profile that I was seeing, just very small mullets, medium-sized prawns, but mainly in that really clear water. There's just a couple of those hurricane colours that I find work really, really well. Like I've also been mucking around lately with the bait junkie flicks, but I was finding they would just get a bit too small and I was just picking up far too many little salmon. They could just get it in their mouth a bit too easy. So just that slightly large profile of the sprat ended up being the winning ticket there.
Fair enough. All right. So after there, how much do you have in the well there? Was that the end of it, or have you got more for the day one?
That was the last few upgrades I scored. Like on the way back, I ended up plucking a few fish off the racks again and a few off the set off. There was a couple of good flats where I did really well on Lucky Craft flash minnows, but no more upgrades. It was more just having a bit of fun on the way back, getting very, very wet in the 20-knot wind.
But coming back in first place.
Happy days there, that's for sure.
Very good, very good. All right. So you're in first place overnight. How'd you go in terms of preparations leading into day two?
So, the night of that was the Saturday night. So I was staying with Mitch McMaster at a joint in where were we, Swansea. So just very nervously retying leaders, making sure everything was perfect, putting new hooks on any hard bodies I was thinking of throwing, but also just trying to minimalize gear a little bit. I also knew in the back of my mind, the one thing that I had shit myself that made me kind of shit myself all night was knowing that wind was going to drop off a lot. And I was very confident in catching fish, but I was very unsure if my flats would hold up. So I was kind of thinking it's all going to be about the racks. So I re-rigged very, very similar to what I was fishing the day before in the racks. Kept those 10-pound leaders, but I did go to 2 plastics. I put 2 risky critters on, 2 different colours, just so if I did happen to get busted off quickly, I could just cast in again. But in my mind, I was kind of thinking with that wind backed off, I wasn't sure if the cranker crab was going to cut it, just due to the fact that it was probably going to be a bit louder when it crashed into the shallow water. And that ended up being a pretty good choice to shelf that one for that morning. But then, say, for my flats fishing, I ended up just took out one of my twitch freaks, put in another grub freak, and just ran 2 of the hurricane sprats, which was a very smart decision.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, let's get into it. Tell us how it actually played out.
So day 2, the rundown towards the racks, it was a sore one. Got down there straight away, and to be honest, it was just a rinse and repeat of day 1. So power poled out from the racks and just drifted plastics alongside the outside of them, and straight away, I think I had my bag, would have been within about 4 casts, and I was sitting again.
Wow.
It was a 2.75 kilo bag. What I did notice, there was a few more people who had well and truly got onto that bite. So it was pretty cool to see everyone whack a good bag early. So it's not every day you get to see everyone sitting on 2.5 to 3 kilos within the first 5 minutes of all arriving at a rack. So there was a lot of cheering happening there. And the bite was very short and sharp for a while, and then it kind of went dead. So I ended up fishing, went down to a rack, one of the lower racks I hadn't quite fished yet. And what I noticed was we had quite a bit more run-in tide, and the tide was just smashing into one of the sets of fleeces. So I kind of positioned myself on the outside, I picked up one more upgrade, not a big one, probably another 150 grams or so, like very respectable. But ultimately I saw this one pole sticking out a little bit further than the rest of this beautiful eddy behind it. And I've sort of done a suicide cast into the lease to get that in. And it was pretty hilarious because, like, every single time you'd have one of those little salmon eat your lure, you had to treat it as if it was a bream. So you want to skip them out as quick as you can. And I've just felt a tap on the risky critter, jammed this fish, and it didn't go anywhere. So I've had to reef as physically hard as I could. And in my mind, it felt like a 2-minute fight, but I think in reality it was 2 seconds. And I ended up getting what my scale said was a 145. So I had that thing absolutely skipping across the surface of the water and didn't net it. That was just straight pole to the kayak into my lap. And it would have been about a 42 fork fish. So I was at that point, it put me well over that 3 kilo mark, and things were looking very good again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love the skip and brim across the top. And if you can do it in a comp and put it in the boat without the net, I reckon that's hectic. Did it wake up? Did it wake up when it was sitting on the floor of the kayak?
Oh, yeah. It was like having a rabid porcupine spiking the crap out of my legs for a while. So that was, I didn't even bother getting a cull tag in that thing straight away. I was like, if I upgrade that, something amazing has happened. So that can just go in the well and we'll worry about it to the end of the day.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic plan. And what sort of hook did you have in it?
Again, that was a bait junkie head in the heavy gauge, and that one held up a lot better than the morning before. So I felt like I had a bit of redemption on that fish.
Yeah, exactly. And look, with those, like, you obviously hit it very hard. So sometimes burying the hook actually helps you to not straighten it. If you can get it hooked right in the bottom of the hook, it tends to not straighten. So.
And it's, as you know, it's like you just want to keep that head turned. So like if you hit them hard enough, you can almost like elastic band them out. Like I tend to run a reasonably long leader. So I was running probably about 2 rod lengths of 10 pounds. So at least you've got a bit of that elastic band effect. So when you do hit them, there is some forgiveness. That's not going to mean you're going to tear a hook out straight or pop a knot. Because, when you're dealing with fish like the potential of what there is in the Swan, you just don't want to really have any weak points in your setup.
Yeah, exactly. And that would have been on the brawler, I take it.
Oh, well and truly.
Yeah, okay. Nice. All right. Tell us about the rest of your day. There must be more. Oh,
there was more. Now. So I hung around those racks for a bit longer, and what I was ultimately finding was there was a lot of fish in that 850 to, again, 900 gram range, and it kind of really hurt to leave because the bite was good. Every sort of pass on a good rack, you'd easily pick up 1 or 2 fish in that size. But I just knew if I was to hold top spot, I was going to have to try and find some better fish. And so I knew where to go. I knew down at the front there was a consistent run of fish up to and around that 1 to 1.2. And if I could sort of just get through those little ones, those fish would be there. So I ended up going back to the same set of flats that I fished on day one, but there was quite a difference in the current. We had a much bigger run-in tide, and that high was much later in the day. So I fished on the side. I caught fish on day one, power poled down there for about half an hour and picked up, it would have only been 2 fish. So I got a little worried at that point. And what I ultimately did was just went for a bit of a look around to try to find another channel that was set up in the same way, but had kind of a reverse. So I parked on a sandbank that had a lot of incoming water flowing sort of parallel, more so diagonally over it. It was sort of on a bit of an angle. And what I found was those fish were coming in from the mouth, filtering over this flat and dropping into that deeper water. So I sort of sat up on the shallows, casting into the deep. By deep, I don't mean too deep, probably about 1.4 meters, and was just, again, fishing hurricane sprats very slowly, just sort of doing that shallow, that bit of a flick mid-water, drop it back down. Much slower fishing. I didn't get any upgrades for about 2 hours until I decided I need to mix this up and switched to the OSP Durga.
Yeah. Okay. Which I now know what it is.
Yes. Everyone will know what they are now. It's been my little secret for a while.
Not anymore.
So I got one in my hands here. Yeah, so 70, I think there are 73 mil sort of medium running jerkbait. There are fines you can get them if you're fishing, say, 4 pound leader, which I was on this lure. They might run to about 1.1 to 1.3 meters. I swapped the hooks out on them to Owner ST36s in a size 8. I just find they're a little bit weightier than the OSP hook, so just gets them to suspend it a little more in that saltier water. Might help them to get a bit deeper if you want to get real technical. And what I sort of selected was, I was looking at, say, the Hurricane Sprat. I was fishing the gun colour, if you're not familiar with that. Sort of like a translucent, greeny, yellow, got a bit of clear in it. It's just a really natural colour. So I just looked in my box. If anyone knows me, I have about 4 million of every single lure in every colour you could imagine. And straight away I picked out a translucenty AUE coloured Durga. I forget the exact colour code of it, but if you have a look on fishing.com.au, you'll see it on there. Adam's got them at the minute. And pretty much
pearl minnow. I reckon the AU colour is a pearl minnow.
Must be.
Yeah, that's what I reckon.
And how I was fishing it is, like, when I fish my jerkbaits, I fish them really aggressive. Like, if there's fish there, I want that lure in their face. I want it to go past them quick, so they have to make that decision in a split second whether they're going to absolutely jam it or not. So pretty much just consistent, really big jerks. So just going whack, 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 pause, whack, 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 jam it into the bottom, get it to silt up a bit of mud or sand, and generally that's when your bite would come. The second you go to twitch it again, you just have a big dead weight. And being a slightly larger lure, like if you are familiar with black brim, pretty much they will come in, they'll often hit that lure sideways, and with those big peg teeth, you got to make sure you jam those fish. Otherwise, what ends up happening is they just bite into it, those teeth go into the lure, and if you do a little just lift to try and set the hook, that lure goes nowhere. So you want to sort of slide their teeth through the lure, get a good hook in the side of the face or in the mouth, and be good. And it was literally first cast I did that. I got another fish that was about, I think it was a 1-1 or a 1-2. And after catching a lot of smaller fish, it was really nice to just have a good run of fish in that sort of similar size range again. So I found just by switching from the Sprat on that second day, going straight to the Durga, something a bit more aggressive that was running at their depth, that's how I got those slightly better bites.
Wow, that's very cool. I like the adjustment for the depth I think is important, and the size 8 hook is quite a large hook, but obviously did the job.
Yeah, like you want to have those slightly larger hooks. It just balances that lure in the salt a little more. Like you got to remember, all these lures we're sort of fishing, as you'd be aware, they're designed for bass. They're designed for fresh water. So the second you're going into like a full salt situation, having, whether you're using tungsten putty, bigger hooks, bit of lead, like just thinking outside the box can often just change the whole way a lure performs for the better.
Yeah. And what leader were you running? Did you say 4 pound?
Yeah, so that was 4 pound YGK Autolos. So traditionally on my jerkbaits, I do like to fish slightly heavier, say a 5 pound, but that 4 pound odd loss, the really interesting thing is it's got a breaking strain of about, I think it's 5.1 pounds. So for the diameter, very thin, but very like a bit of a higher breaking strain. So in terms of really setting that hook, working your lure harder, it just gives you a bit of flexibility that where you're not going to accidentally crack a fish off. Like if I'm fishing, say, 3 pound on jerkbaits, which I know a lot of people do, I tend to go home with a lot less lures due to Dylan doing silly things.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's right. It's just been aggressive and setting hooks, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there you go. All right. That was the end of the fishing for you. That was pretty much the last of the upgrades and what have you.
Yeah, like once again, I ended up running back upriver and sort of fishing a few leashes on the way back. Caught some very respectable fish, but there was going to be nothing that was going to help me out. Like I think my smallest fish in that bag was just under that 1-1 mark, and I was hoping in my mind, I was like, oh, if I could get another sneaky 1-4, this would be good, but was not to be had.
It would have been good to see a 1-4 in there. Would have bumped you up and hit that 7 kilo mark, which would have been very exciting.
Maybe next Tassie tour.
Exactly. And look, 6.81, mate, for 6 fish is pretty awesome, particularly out of the kayak. Enough to put you in place, mate. So that's so exciting. Mate, so we're nearly at the end of it. Is there any, in terms of the fishing, is there anything we missed?
Oh, I don't think so. Like it was kind of nice in the sense that it was very simple fishing. Like I just stuck to my gun, stuck to what I knew, wasn't rotating through many lures. The plan that I made for myself on day 1 was executed well, rolled over to day 2 well, and exceeded my expectations, in all honesty. Like I was very worried with the wind that it wasn't going to get up enough, but day 2, there was just enough ripple on that water to sort of make the fish feel a bit more comfortable and ultimately give me confidence that what I was doing was going to equal getting the right bites.
Yeah, mate, that's fantastic. One of the things I noticed, I spoke to Ben, who was the preceding guest on the show, but the same thing applies, I assume. Like you take down 1 million lures and then you nail it back to like 4 or 5 or maybe 6. And that's about where you end up.
And it was funny, like on pre-fish, like I've kind of got what I was throwing out in front of me. So like on pre-fish, I had flash minnows and laydowns and everything else. And I thought I'd be throwing those all weekend. But nah, it's sort of just refined it even more. So funny, you still take everything with you, but it's just funny to think 2 packets of plastics and a tiny tray of hard bodies would have got me through.
Would have got you through.
Yeah.
But you don't know till the end of it. It's the hindsight thing.
We've got to take it all though.
Exactly. All right, mate. So listen, there's a bunch of things you got. What did you get for winning first place in Tassie?
Yeah, so it would have been $1,500 and something dollars.
40?
1,540, bingo. So that was very nice. Well, that pays for the spirit and accommodation and a few other things along the way. New net.
Yeah.
That one.
A new net.
Yeah. And then a sneaky $100.
We need a net sponsor.
Oh yeah, Berkeley want to give me free nets. I go through them enough, being nice and careless. That's for sure.
Fair enough. And like you just said, while I was probably talking over the top of you, yeah, you did take out the big brim at 1.39, which is obviously a cracking fish.
Yeah, like I think it must have lost a bit of condition in the well, but that's okay. It didn't need to be any bigger than it was.
Yeah, and I do see that under big brim we've got Dylan Price all the way from New South Wales at 1.39. So how about that?
Yeah, I had a bit of a giggle at the New South Wales part.
Fair enough. All right, what else did you take home? That wasn't the end of it.
Oh no, so prize pack, and I will say they've stepped up those prize bags this year. A lot of good Daiwa goodies in there too. So, and the great thing was lots of stuff I throw. So I think there was a few packs of things like Hurricane Sprats actually. That was good. So I think there's some Sprat 75s, a couple of the 65s, I think they are. A bit of atomic gear. So really good price pack, to be honest.
Yeah, so good. All right, and what else?
And the most important part, the spot at this year's AC.
Yeah. How was that? There was I think there was 2 spots, and you got one of them, and one for Ben, as well as one more thing to go on the mantelpiece, mate.
A lovely trophy. So that joins the rest of them in the fishing room. Always nice to. I was just happy to have a green one in there this time. So First one for Series 15, probably the only one, but well, who knows?
You don't know that, mate. You don't know that.
Bloody hard to get this day and age, that's for sure. So always pretty happy when I walk past that and see it.
Exactly, especially with the number one. So how good is that?
Been a few years since I've had that.
All right. So, mate, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Oh, absolutely. Number one, Mitch, for just being such a good travel buddy. Like, we go on all sorts of absolutely wacko adventures, and Tassie has treated us shithouse in the past, and it was nice for it to put on a show for us. So, yeah, we did lots of social fishing, stayed together for nearly 2 weeks in Tas, probably drove each other mad a bit, but all in all, that was great. Big thanks as well to Andy at Ebb Tide Tackle. So Andy's always helped me out with random bits and pieces along the way, particularly in the way of rods. Big thanks to my partner, Ali, for always putting up with me disappearing at the drop of a hat to go drive to some tournament or social fish in the middle of nowhere for days at a time. And that's probably the main couple there, I dare say. And shout out to Miller Rods. I have no association with them whatsoever, but they just make a damn fine product.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. That is a great shout. Now, for anyone that's been listening along and say, I kind of know this guy's voice, I know Dylan's voice, and you can not quite sure where they can place us. Now, Dylan, mate, you've had a podcast in the past, and you're a little bit between episodes, but yeah, do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so myself and Mitch McMaster, back in the days of the old COVID-19, we started On The Cast. So it's kind of gone a little stale for the time being. There's always talk of bringing a few back, but there is about 30 episodes up there. So they're not all Bream based. A lot of it is, like, if you know myself and Mitch, estuary fishing is kind of our absolute passion. Plenty of stuff on bream, estuary perch, bass, but we also cover a lot of on the, say, tuna, kingfish, GT side as well. So there's a lot of tackle talk. Like, we are both absolute tackle junkies. Mitch himself is a little bit too obsessed, but it does make for a really interesting podcast. A lot of really good guests along the way too. So people like Dowley, Tommy Slater, and many, many others have probably chatted to us for far too long on the microphone on that there.
Yeah, no, look, it's a great little podcast. I remember, I think the last one I listened to was one with maybe Dale Baxter.
Yep.
But yeah, and interesting fact now is both yourself and Mitch both have a round win. Round win? No, a podium.
Place at the AC, so that's going to get nice and competitive, no doubt. So you'll see us on 30-centimetre yellowfin bream. We'll see what goes.
Oh, mate, up there, mate. There are some big fish in there. Just going to see who finds them. There's definitely some crackers up there.
So I hear. I am keen for that. I haven't fished that part of New South Wales, so yeah, very keen to get up and do some serious cranking, I dare say.
Definitely. And mate, and speaking of crank, mate, there'll be some cranky yellowfin bream there for you.
I can't wait to stick my hand in the live well with all three of them jabbing me at once. Always
How
fun.
good is that? All right, Dylan, mate, it has been great talking to you. Mate, congratulations on such a good win, leading from day one, coming through, biggest bag, biggest bream. Mate, congratulations, and hopefully I get to speak to you again soon.
Hope so, Deethy. Thanks so much for having me on, and also for just running this podcast. Like, it is an absolutely incredible resource for so many anglers like myself and literally everyone else under the sun. So, yeah, wouldn't be chatting to you if you weren't doing it, and yeah, greatly appreciated.
Perfect, mate. All right, I will talk to you again. Thank you.
Thanks, Deethy.
All right, so there you have it, everybody. What a cracking episode. In addition to that, this weekend that's just gone past, we had such a lot of tournaments. We had the Western Australian Tournament Anglers Boat Round 1. We had the Queensland Team Series. We had the East Coast Bream Series. We had the Vic Bream Classics. Just a crazy weekend in terms of chasing bream. So in any case, yeah, congratulations to all those guys for the winners and the place getters. I'll be reaching out to you shortly, and hopefully we can have a chat if that's what you'd like to do. So yeah, look, I hope you enjoyed the show, and I look forward to speaking to you next week on the Bream Fishing Project.
Thanks for listening. Hopefully you were informed, inspired, and entertained. If you were able to learn something or just enjoyed listening, please consider subscribing and rate us on your favourite podcasting platform.